Hello everyone and welcome to the Green Man channel. Hope you're doing good and well. So it's time for another horror films first watch tier list on the channel, the first in a while. If you're not familiar with these tier lists, this is where I group together horror films that I've seen for the first time since I last did a tier list on the channel, and I rate them and put them into tiers. Now these are lots of new releases here this time. I generally do that. I generally talk about the newest releases, the latest releases that I've watched for the first time when I'm doing these tier lists. But there are also sometimes I throw in some older films as well. Actually, most of these are, all of these actually are within the last 3 years looking at the list, but most of them are releases I've seen for the first time. In many cases, actually at theatres since the last time I did one of these tier lists. So I'm excited to talk about some of these. We're going to start here with Immaculate, which was directed by Michael Mohan and stars Sydney Sweeney, who seems to be very much a star of the moment. Lots of people are talking about Sydney Sweeney right now. I mean, she's also been in films like Madam Web, which have been maybe talked about for the wrong reasons. But then we've also had her in films like Anyone But You, rom-coms as well. So she seems like she's got some versatility with the different films and different characters that she's doing in these films. And I thought she was really good as the nun, Cecilia. I think that was her name anyway. And I thought she did a really good job at maintaining tension from scene to scene. Because the thing to remember is that Sydney Sweeney was the focus, so she was like, got a lot of screen time. She was the main character in this film. And pretty much every scene was involving her in some way. And I thought she did really well at maintaining the tension, the suspense that the film needed, and the angst as well, and the anxiety, all of that. She managed to get across throughout the film. I thought that was pretty impressive. The film itself, I know it's not for me a particularly, not doing anything massively new within the horror genre. I mean, this is pretty well-worn genre. I think religious horror, nuns, and all that sort of thing is not anything new. But I thought it did a good job. I enjoyed the horror scenes, the more sort of gory scenes in this film. I thought were done very well, particularly like the scene where Cecilia's looking through a keyhole of a door. I don't want to say exactly what happens in case you've not seen Immaculate, but I think that's a really good scene. The ending will shock audiences probably, or divide audiences. But despite its shocking nature, I sort of felt like the final scene fit in with the context of this movie. So I didn't think it was actually, it sort of for me worked with the rest of the film, but it will divide audiences. It won't be for everyone. It's very shocking. But overall, Immaculate's a good film. I'm going to put that one in A tier. Next up, we've got Lisa Frankenstein, another pretty good film. And actually, I saw this after having seen Baghead, Night Swim, what Baghead I'm about to talk about shortly. So, basically, this film felt great at the time because of the films I'd seen very much, before it. Um, the bar was low for 2024 at this point. That's the thing I have to try to remember. But I thought this was a really fun film. I did a video actually about the soundtrack because I loved the soundtrack of this film. I loved the visuals. I love the aesthetic. I love the way it kind of accesses that late 80s zeitgeist. And I thought there was a lot to genuinely really enjoy about this film. I thought where it maybe fell a little short at times was it didn't make the most of some of the comedic opportunities that the film presented. I felt there was more I felt they could have done to make the film, a little bit better in the comedy department. But otherwise, I thought most of its aspects were really, really well delivered. Good performances from Catherine Newton and Cole Sprouse. If you don't know what Lisa Frankenstein is all about, well, essentially it's a guy is brought back from the dead by a bolt of lightning, and Lisa Frankenstein, or the Lisa in the film, she has to, I think her name's Lisa Swallows, actually. She has to put him back together, literally. And that's where the comedy comes in. And yeah, it's just it's just a fun film. Does this belong in A tier? Ooh, I mean, I'm going to put it into B tier, but I had a lot of fun with it. I did do a video about it, as I say, so I obviously enjoyed it, but I'm not sure I can put it quite at the same level as Immaculate. But I can see why people love this one. This is going to be potentially a cult classic of the future. So next up, I've got History of Evil. And was this film a ginormous bore? It was absolutely drawn out to the max, I felt. Here's the thing. I liked some of the dystopian ideas of the movie, but where it fell short for me was just the pace was just so slow. I mean, it was, for me, an even slower film than Night Swim. which I thought was very, very dull and, just very flat in its execution, with not only a lack of much in the way of good writing, but a lack of exciting or entertaining moments within it as well. History of Evil's the same sort of problem, but even more so I felt with this film. This was just so dull. It was basically like watching paint dry for me. I really just found this film such a drag to get through. Like I say, some good ideas, but the execution of the movie was just way off, I felt. And so, uh, I appreciate what it was maybe trying to achieve, but this one's going to be a D tier for me. Did not enjoy History of Evil, I'm afraid. If you did, that's absolutely fine, fair play. But for me, this film, just did absolutely nothing. Next up, we've got Abigail, and Abigail I saw actually for my birthday recently, and had a blast. It was a great time. This film, think like Scream, think Ready or Not. It's actually directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin. And so it's no surprise that the film is very much for me in his style. I enjoyed the way that the characters are built up. Time and attention was spent with the backstories to the characters, the interactions of the characters, particularly the criminals, and what their motivations are. So you can sort of see a logical build up to them, and then the sort of Abigail moments, that bit more amplified as well. And it's a well done film. I think the star of this movie, although it has some big names in, like, Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, the star of this film for me is actually Abigail herself, Alicia Ware, who I thought was absolutely great. I thought she was brilliant. And, she deserves, to be commended for her performance in Abigail. It was a lot of fun. Also has Giancarlo Esposito, the guy from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, who plays Gus Fring. And he had only a bit of a cameo in this film, really, but he was great too. And I think overall, Abigail, I recommend to you if you like horror comedy. If you loved Ready or Not, the chances are you're going to love Abigail. So I'm going to put this one into S tier. Only S tier one so far. Now we move on to Baghead. Baghead was directed by Alberto Corredor, stars Freya Allen. And this was pretty, how do I put it? I think it was a bit disappointing, but at least it, unlike History of Evil, unlike Night Swim, this one tagged me along with it. I was entertained a little more than with those films. I thought the Baghead sequences, in this film, you've got characters, or particularly Freya Allen's character, trying to talk to, get through to her dad, I think, through the Baghead thing. This is all now, it feels like a distant memory because it was a while ago that I saw Baghead, because it was a couple of months ago actually. But it's those sequences which I thought were the better sequences. My problem with Baghead was that it didn't build up the father-daughter relationship, I felt, enough for me. It didn't build up the characters enough. Classic kind of horror failing, really. A lot of horror films do sometimes not invest enough time in writing really good characters. And that was where Baghead actually struggled. Didn't think it was that bad, actually. It wasn't that bad. But it was pretty disappointing. But, at least this one gave me something to entertain me for the time that it was on, and I wasn't super bored throughout like I was with History of Evil, for instance. At least this had something to give to me. Next up, we got You'll Never Find Me, a film which has received some rave reviews. I mean, people have been talking about like this, really positively. For me, I somewhat get the positive reviews of this one, but I'm also feel a little bit mixed about it, because it's not really the ultra minimalist style of this isn't going to be for everyone. And I don't think it was for me, really. I thought the performances were great of the leads in this film. I thought that, the woman and the man, they were both excellent. Both really did well with absolutely minimalist setup, and their performances were compelling. But the thing is with this film, for me, it's just got repetitive after about 45, 50 minutes of the way into the film. The tone of the film's so samey. I couldn't get out of that enough to feel that the film, I needed just that bit more excitement, just a few more moments thrown in, just to keep me a little bit more like I felt like something was bubbling away under the surface more. With You'll Never Find Me, I just felt like there was something just lacking to really entice me into the movie properly. And I thought the ending wasn't entirely satisfactory either. But I know some people are absolutely raving out about how good this film is, and they say it's great, it's fantastic. It was a Shudder release, I think. I think I watched this on Shudder as well. I do have a Shudder subscription, which I try to make best use of. I think this is going to be B tier for me, just because I don't think it's quite my kind of thing, but I do respect the hell out of what they tried to achieve and the performances. Given it was so minimalist, I thought that that was done very, very well. So next up, we've got films now which aren't 2024 releases, and they are two films I've talked about quite recently on top 10 lists as well, and I am aware of that. But these are films also that I've seen for the first time, but they got thrown into my top 10 list because I really enjoyed them. Now, Speak No Evil is a very disturbing film directed by Christian Taftrup, all about not reading red flags for me and not taking action when you see the warning signs in people, people that you're maybe getting to know for the first time, and not, showing and not challenging them, not challenging them enough, not doing enough to get away, or to take, people that, kids essentially that you care for, and get them to safety. And this Danish film actually did very, very well. I thought it was a excellent film, very disturbing, with another ending that will divide people, rather like Immaculate. And that's exactly where it's going to go, right next to Immaculate in A tier. Good film, very, very disturbing, with an ending that won't be for everybody, but still very, very well done horror film. And they're going to be remaking this one. I think, if I remember rightly, I've seen a trailer for this as well, with a trailer for the remake, or the new version of it, with James McAvoy. He's going to be starring in that one. Anyway, Wrong Turn 2021 is next, and my feelings on this have been made very, very clear. I mean, perhaps this is going to be super predictable when you just saw my, or if you saw my 2020-21 top 10 horror films of that year. This was top. So, of course, it's going to be S tier. And the reasons for this was directed by Mike Nelson. The reasons why I really liked Wrong Turn's reimagining here, like a modern reimagining of the original film from the early 2000s, was just, I thought it did a lot right. The tension was there. An element of story was there. I mean, in a film where people take a wrong turn, there's not ever going to be a huge amount of story in it. But I thought what there was with the characters was done well. It's written well. And I love the horror elements of this film. A lot of horror films, they don't always get the horror right. And this film did for me. I thought it got the gruesome sequences done well. It got the scares pretty good. It had you on the edge of your seat throughout with what was going to happen to the different characters, who, I felt there was just about a good enough job with the characters to keep you relatively invested with them, or at least following them to the point of interest. And I thought this was a really good reimagining of this 2003 film, the original film. And yeah, I think it's S tier worthy. It totally shocked me, it surprised me, and it even made me put it at number 1 in my top 10 horror films of 2021. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the tier list. Do drop a like and a sub if you enjoy these kind of videos. If you want to watch more tier lists, of course, and get notified when I do these kind of horror videos. Of course, the channel is very much also a music-related channel with lots of content on album reviews, album rankings. Of course, we're running Symphonic Sundays on the series as well at the moment, with interviews with bands and ranking challenges on that particular series too, talking about symphonic metal. But otherwise, from me, I hope you all have great days, and until next time, from me, bye for now.